returning self-governance to an entity that had it for such a long time is so fundamental to do for our people.
Remember your culture, remember your language, and don't leave that as an afterthought as to how you're going to include that in your self-government agreement or your treaty or your laws.
The message I like to give communities is to believe in yourself and believe in your culture. The culture and the understandings, the beliefs, everything that's contained therein, it's served us well for thousands of years. The further we've moved away from it, the more dysfunction we've actually found ourselves in. So I truly believe that the closer we become back to our culture, it's going backwards to go forwards, really. Even though we started way back here in the year 2000 with a visioning process, we're only here, okay? And how long is that? 15 years, okay? It took us 2 years to actually have our vision approved, because it's not about the leadership doing what the leadership does. A good leader follows his people, but stays one step ahead. And so what we had to do was ensure that through our processes of moving towards, what do they call it, treaty? No, we're not calling it treaty. Even though that's what we use towards walking towards self-government, it's actually the concept of self-government that we want to achieve. So for us, treaty was just a way to get some resources to do some of the things we want to do. And that's what we've heard here, that without the resources, it's hard to actually do governance. We are all self-governing. We can't fool ourselves on that one right now. And if we're waiting for an Indian Act to disappear or something else to disappear, it's a cop-out, and I'll say that straight up, okay? And I mean that because my granny reminds me that less than 100 years ago, we were self-sufficient. Self-sufficient as a nation, okay? And so as a nation, when we started to enter into the treaty process, way back when, as this opportunity to move ourselves forward, we said, why are we in this again? And so we took that time to say, okay, I think we need to do some visioning. Because we were all trained to do this planning work. We all have these professionals come in and do strategic planning with us, right? And the first thing they want you to do is some kind of a vision. And then they want you to do a SWOT analysis, you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's all fun. We used to do that. Every year we used to do that. It's like after a while you scratch your head, didn't we just do that? It's like, and the year doesn't even seem to go by. It's like 2 weeks later you're doing something else. And we never actually moved towards the implementation of the concepts we were putting down, and even the vision stuff we were dealing with, okay? Back in the day, we were trained to actually think about getting rid of things. And I actually saw some children in their posters talking about visioning, talking about getting rid of things. So they saw a future of no more fighting, and a future where there's no more drinking, and a future where there's no more of this and no more of that. And none of those children could actually say, I see a future where there is. So all of our kids have been trained by the way we do business in our communities to find a problem and get rid of that problem. And in fact, you'll see over the course of history, there's been documents, whole publications, the Indian problem, right? We're not a problem. In fact, we're a solution. And the first thing we have to do is remember that.
So most of my career has been focused on creating wellness for my community, which has led to the realization that self-governance is really critical to that path of wellness for our community. So I am a strong advocate and supporter of self-governance for First Nations through my own experience in Tawasin, and I believe self-governance will be the path away from poverty for First Nation communities. But this is a challenging discussion. Many communities are stuck not knowing what process they should engage in. And I'm just going to talk about governance from a former chief's perspective, because I think our communities are stuck in a very inadequate Indian Act framework, and our citizens don't know how we have been set up to fail with these inadequate structures. On top of this, current chief and councils administer inadequate Indian Affairs programs, which can never meet our needs. And much of the time, I've seen we turn on our leaders and not the structures. And sometimes there is legitimate concern about governance with some councils, but regardless, we have little or no way to address the concerns proactively or even reactively in many cases. Yet many of our people are afraid to let go of the Indian Act. I think that this is in part, there are a few examples to see about what self-governance looked like. The real cost, in my opinion, was doing nothing and not seizing the opportunity we had to move the community forward. I think that these are different issues to struggle through, but in the end, my community was unwilling to wait while another generation was lost. How many more youth would we sacrifice waiting for a perfect agreement? What is the cost of waiting for a perfect arrangement, especially when the odds are stacked against us, when we're not dealing with a perfect federal government and a government that's failed us as an European contact? So I came to the conclusion that the cost of doing nothing was more severe than the potential risk regarding the more unsavory aspects of the treaty-making model.
I think for communities going down the path of self-government, it's a huge transition, and it's scary because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's around the corner, and it's new. As much as we might rally against the Indian Act and say we must end this tyranny and we have to get past it, when it actually comes time to take that step, there's an apprehension in communities. And I would remind communities that this is not new. You've been self-governing before. I think what Gwen said today in her presentation is key, is that self-government has been around longer than the Indian Act, and the Indian Act is just kind of overshadowing the self-government that currently exists in your community. So I would say don't be scared about the future, don't be scared about what might lie ahead, and understand that, you know what, if other communities are doing it, like West Bank, we're successful at self-government, currently seeing great advances in our community, then you can do it too. There's no big secret here to self-government, but it does take a lot of hard work, it does take a lot of commitment, and it takes, I think at the end of the day, some very committed leaders within your community to get it done. But you can do it, you will be successful, and we have to move back past that conversation now. We can do it, we can self-govern, we can run our own affairs. I think the next question needs to be moving past that and redefining and recapturing our culture and language, because I think even if at the end of the day we all become self-governing but lose our culture and language, then we've lost the objective of what we're trying to protect through self-government. If we look across the world, you can see developing countries, you can see all sorts of nations of people coming together and learning to govern in this model called a liberal democratic style of government. It's not new, it's not revolutionary, it's not like mind-blowing. It's just a model that's existed since, I think, if my history's right, dating back to the Westminster model in Britain, going right back to the Greeks. It's not something that's just totally out of this world. All that's revolutionary about it is that the federal government is finally letting our people do it. And I don't think it's surprising to say, well, hey, if you let First Nations govern themselves, they're going to be successful. Of course we are, because we were successful before contact. So it's not surprising to me that that's happened. Yes, government is good. Yes, developing these institutions are good. But you know what? If you look at our government and you look at the government beside us in the city of Kelowna, or beside us in the district of West Kelowna, or even kind of expand it and compare it to what the province is doing, it's not much different. We're using the same metrics of success. And it's really a colonial model of government. I think the real challenge, and this is my challenge to you, because I know you're all in various journeys on your journey toward, or various stages on your journey towards self-government, is how are you going to indigenize these institutions of governance? How are you going to make sure your culture and language will shine through these institutions of governance? Because we have jurisdiction to govern over culture and language, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to actually doing that, we have no idea how you actually do that. And so we've started, community planning has given us a model to follow and given us an outline. And through community planning, we've started to incorporate aspects of language, aspects of traditional knowledge into how we govern and into our actual governance structures. So now our community plan is outlined based on the story of the 4 food chiefs, which I'll tell you this afternoon, the story. And then the 4 food chiefs are also now used to structure our departments and our council committees. And that's, to me, a better measure of success than what our annual GDP is or what our assessed values of our lands are.
We're going to be a generation of change because of what our ancestors gone through, the struggles that I've seen that my family have gone through. And I know that it's not easy, but like I said, like, my elders sacrificed a lot for me to have the views I have, and like I've realized that, and I'm taking that not for granted. I'm gonna take every step that I need to take, and I'm not gonna look back anymore.
All the bands have been through so much, and they've been through much hardship, but they just keep on going, and now they are becoming self-sufficient, and it's really amazing. It makes me excited for my band because I hope that one day that we'll be like that too, and we'll be able to look after ourselves.
We're breaking away from an old Indian Act system to a new system, which I feel is challenging. It's scary. And yet again, it's still uplifting.
We've gotten so used to the Indian Act, some people, and it makes them worry about change. But it needs to happen.